Hello, my name is Melody Potratz, and today I will be comparing score editions for two different pieces. The first piece is the first movement of Clementi's Sonatina in C major, Opus 36, number 3. I selected 3 different books that contain this piece. They are More Classics, Romantics, Moderns, Solos for the Advancing Pianist, compiled and edited by Paul Scheftel, Celebration Series Perspectives, Level 7, published by the Royal Conservatory of Music and edited by Dr. Trish Sauerbrei, and Piano Literature for the Intermediate Grades, Volume 3, compiled and edited by James Bastian. I will compare fingering, dynamics, phrasing, articulation, pedal and tempo, and ease of reading. Of the 3, Scheftel's edition contains the least fingering markings. When they are present, they are at the beginnings of phrases, chord progressions, or in places that require finger crossings, such as fast scalar passages. The Celebration Series edition has slightly more than the Scheftel edition. You can see this if you look at the fingering in measure 10. The Celebration Series edition contains fingerings at every chord change in the right hand, whereas the Scheftel edition only contains them in places where the right hand may have to shift up the keyboard. The Bastian edition contains the most fingering. Most of it is practical. As you can see, anytime there is a repeated note, there is a fingering change. You may find that this will work for some students, but not for others. The Scheftel and Celebration Series editions have almost identical dynamic markings, which leads me to believe that they are mostly not editorial and were written in by the composer himself. The Bastian edition contains significantly more dynamic markings. In an attempt to show a little bit of expression, it is littered with crescendos, diminuendos, and in-between dynamics such as mezzo piano that are not present in the other 2 scores. Phrase markings are similar across all 3 editions with a couple exceptions. One exception would be in measure 13. As you can see, the Scheftel and Bastian editions have one continuous phrase for this descending line, whereas the Celebration Series edition breaks the line into 2 phrases. In general, the Bastian edition contains excessive phrase markings. For example, here you can see a long phrase mark over the left-hand accompaniment figure. While this can help a student who may not know to connect these notes, the mark is unnecessary. In this case, the Scheftel edition has slightly more articulation markings than the Celebration Series, and the Bastian once again has the most markings. This is most evident in staccato and tenuto marks. The Bastian edition is the only edition that contains tenuto and pedal markings. While this is the interpretation of the editor, it is not necessarily consistent with the character and classical style of the piece. The piece is marked spiritoso, which means it is to be played with a lively and spirited character. Because of this, I believe that the use of tenuto and pedal markings would make the piece sound a little bit too heavy. For instance, if I play measure 12 with a lively and spirited character, it might sound like this. If I played with tenuto and pedal, it might sound like this. You may also notice that the Celebration series is the only edition that indicated a metronomic range for tempo. Since it is the only one, this is clearly an editorial recommendation. In my opinion, the edition that is the easiest to read is the Celebration series. I find that the darker, heavier print of the Scheftel edition makes the notes a little less distinguishable. The sheer quantity of extra editorial markings in the Bastian edition makes the music just look too cluttered. There are advantages and disadvantages to editorial markings. An edition that contains more editorial markings might be useful for a student who needs a little more guidance. Alternatively, this guidance may be best provided by the teacher, and an edition with less markings leaves more room for interpretation and may be closer to the intentions of the composer and the performance practices for that compositional period. The next piece I will be comparing is Chopin's Prelude in E minor, Opus 28, number 4. Because of their editorial similarities for the Clementi sonatina, I chose to take the Celebration series Perspectives Level 7 and Scheftel's More Classics, Romantics, Moderns, and compare them to an anthology of piano music, Volume 3, The Romantic Period, selected and edited by Dennis Agay. As was the case with the Clementi sonatina, the Scheftel edition has the least fingering markings. What is there is practical and doesn't leave you confused or wondering what should be done. The Celebration series and Agay editions have similar fingerings, the Agay edition having slightly more written in. Both are practical, so it would be up to the student or the teacher to decide what would work best for them. In this case, the dynamic markings in the Scheftel and Agay editions are exactly identical. The Celebration series edition has a couple added diminuendos, but is otherwise almost the same as the other two. Phrase markings for this piece are exactly identical across all three editions. Since there are no differences, it is likely that these were written in by Chopin himself and not superimposed by an editor. Articulation is also identical across all three editions. At the beginning of the piece in the Celebration series edition, you can see con pedale written in, meaning with pedal. The Scheftel and Agay editions only have pedal indications in measures 17 and 18. However, many people play this piece with pedal all the way throughout the piece. The left-hand accompaniment is full of eighth note chords, and there are markings indicating long phrases, so using pedal will help connect the chords better. All three editions indicate a largo, or slow, tempo. Only the Celebration Series edition, once again, contains the metronomic tempo range. All three editions are relatively easy to read. None of them are excessively littered with unnecessary editorial markings. I still hold the opinion that the less bold print of the Celebration Series is the easiest to read. Editions by Paul Scheftel, the Royal Conservatory of Music, and Denis Agay are fairly reliable and good editions to use. If possible, I would steer clear of editions by James Bastian, as editorial markings are in excess and are not always consistent with performance practice and with other editions.